Hello, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this panel discussion on management and consultancy. We've got a number of questions for our five panelists regarding their careers to date and their advice to students who are interested in a career in consulting and project management. After that, there will be time for you to ask some questions, and we'll do our best to get through as many of those as possible. The session is being recorded, so it can be watched again later, and obviously we'll share those links with you to all later on this week. So as our panelists come in, I'm just going to wait, and then I'm going to ask a question to each of them, and then hopefully we'll get going with them telling you a little bit about themselves. So if I could briefly ask each of our panelists to essentially say who you are, what companies you've worked for, and just a bit about yourself and your background. So if I could ask that first of all to Gary, please.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Good
morning. My name is Gary Ling. I'm the owner of the company The Missing Link, aptly named, and that is primarily involved with the sports business and goes across sponsorship, marketing, and I'd say client servicing as well.
Thank you. Howard, if we come to you next, please.
Sure, nice to meet you all. So Howard Doberman, old Leo, 92. I am a partner at a firm called Deloitte, one of the kind of largest professional services firm in the world. I'm a partner in our consulting business, which is different to accountancy, tax, corporate finance. I've been there 25 years. I work in the media, entertainment and telecom sector. So essentially, I help improve the way that these organizations operate. What does that mean in practice? Many things. I help them restructure to be more efficient. I help them modernize the way that they work, the technology that they use, the products and services that they offer. And yeah, so brand names you'll have heard of. So, you know, BT, Vodafone, Sky, Universal Pictures, Disney, Google. These are the kind of companies that I tend to work for.
Great, thank you. If we go to Mark Rushworth next. Morning, Mark.
Morning. So yes, my name is Mark Rushworth. I was at Leeds Grammar School left Leeds Grammar in 2000. So for the last decade, I have worked on bringing ideas on paper, so deep technology ideas that have a sustainable element to them, from that idea on paper through the development and funding stages to commercialization. So the first technology I did that with was for a company that I founded called SageTech Medical Equipment. And that took a technology that captures and recycles anesthetic agents so that they can be placed back on the market under license. And these anesthetic agents are extremely pollutive and wasteful, which is why creating that circular economy is extremely important. And then most recently, I founded Finchetto, which is using light instead of electricity to perform computation. So the last decade has been very entrepreneurial. Prior to that, I worked in commercial for a number of blue chip organizations, including L'Oreal, the makeup company.
Great, thank you. Mark Young, if we could, hopefully this won't get too confusing. Mark, if we could come to you next, please. Hello, morning.
Good morning, everybody. I was at GCell back in the 80s, which makes me a lot older than I'd like to be. In terms of career, is through knowing not really what I wanted to do, I drifted into accountancy as a first role working for Deloitte. And from there, we moved to Asda. So I spent 15 years as a retailer, working in the US, Germany, the UK, and then from there moved into industry. So working for manufacturers based domestically, internationally, in textiles, beauty, greeting cards. Currently, I am the commercial director for an international door business. We're based in Barnsley, about £250 million turnover, and I pick up customer services, marketing and sales.
Okay, thank you. And finally to Andy, please. Good morning.
Yeah, hi, Andrew Kerr. I left GCell in 91. I spent 20 years overseas with a company called Benline Agencies, which focuses on maritime services. So I was based primarily in Singapore, Vietnam, and Malaysia. Returned with the company to Europe 6 years ago, where I do a European-based commercial role aimed at talking to people who own ships, who manage ships, who transport goods from, well, globally, dealing with oil and gas companies, renewable sector these days. So we do a lot of work in the wind farm business, both onshore and offshore. And in a consultancy role, my focus is on attracting new customers, keeping existing clients, looking at better ways that we can manage their maritime requirements.
Okay, thank you. Lovely. Obviously, talking to you now, you're obviously all quite far on in your journeys. I wonder if you could just give us a bit of background on how you got to where you are now. For example, if you went to university, what degree did you do, or what kind of what avenue you went to lead you into the job that you're doing now? So if I could ask that to Howard first, please.
Sure. So, yeah, as I say, I left grammar school in '92. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I think that people that enter my profession, our profession, probably tend to be in the same boat. I did maths, chemistry, and economics for A-level. I wanted to do something in the business world, so I did a degree at Manchester UMIST in international management with American studies. It gave me a year in the States, which was definitely transformative to me in life and in kind of work as well. And then really, I didn't know what I wanted to do other than be in business. So I applied for a number of graduate jobs, kind of management trainee schemes, but particularly looked at what was at the time kind of the big 8 accountancy and professional services firms. And I joined, as I think, Rob, you said you were there, I joined Price Waterhouse as it was then, in a generic consulting job, which was brilliant. I mean, consulting as a career to go into if you don't really know what you want to do, I think unlike any other profession, gives you incredible variety, allows you to work for an incredible range of companies, on their biggest issues, and frankly, travel all over the world. So like Andrew, I spent a year with Price Waterhouse in the Far East, and then joined Arthur Andersen, which many of your students probably will never have heard of, but it kind of imploded following a big scandal around 2001. We were subsumed into Deloitte, and I've been there ever since. So yeah, my career, I'm probably a bit unusual, having been in one employer for 25 years. I have almost left a few times, but truthfully, I love the variety that the business has given me. I've lived all over the world. I've worked with some brilliant organizations. You get to know how organizations work, as I say, quite intimately. And it's brilliant, not just for the clients you work with, the places you work, but also for the teammates and colleagues and and friendships that I've built over the last 25 years.
Great, thank you. Mark Rushworth, what's your background, please?
So my background, so starting at school, my A-levels were maths, further maths, French and German. And so I had a very odd split between social sciences, humanities and STEM subjects. I actually ended up going to university to do modern languages, to French and German. So I did modern languages at Oxford. And then after that, got a scholarship called a Daiwa Scholarship, to live in Tokyo for 3 years, and 2 years on the scholarship, and then I stayed on for a year. But the idea of the scholarship is to give UK students a taste and a flavour of Japanese society, working culture, and life in Japan. And so I did an intensive language training course in the first year, and then worked for a number of Japanese companies, including Nissan, the car company, and a financial consultancy called the Daiwa Institute of Research whilst I was out there. I then got into market research, and it's at that point, so I stayed out for another year, and I worked for a market research company that was bridging the gap between Western companies wanted to do Japanese research in Japan and setting up the focus groups and delivering the research in Japanese. And that's what really got me excited about product and service and commercial side of things. So when I came back to the UK, similar to Howard actually, was looking at graduate programs and management training schemes, and ended up joining L'Oreal in the commercial team. And so made my way up to national account manager on the various sort of L'Oreal Paris national accounts. And after that, got into technology. And it was at that point, I always knew I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. And so with that kind of experience under my belt, I thought, okay, right, now's the time. There was an opportunity to take on this technology, the anesthetic recycling technology, and build it through to commercialization, which is what I did. And so that has led into the various other aspects of my career. So a sort of an odd choice of A-levels, perhaps. I don't mean that in any way other than that it's not necessarily normal to have that split. but that's how basically I come full circle back to the numbers when actually I started with the words.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Mark Young, please.
Okay, so in terms of, I'm casting my mind back, A-levels, history, geography and economics. And economics was something new to me. I didn't do business studies beforehand. And out of the three, it kind of gelled a little bit. I found it really interesting and I was curious. And then from there, I went to Nottingham University, which I loved. Nottingham University was a fantastic campus university, to do industrial economics with accounting. So I continued the curiosity about business. I wanted to understand a little bit more. And if I'm honest, my father owned a small engineering business, and I was quite interested in his life and how he viewed things. And I thought it was quite a good link. And from university, other than thoroughly enjoying the 3 years there excessively, is I really didn't know what I wanted to do in my career. I fell into accountancy, if I'm honest, and worked for a business called Deloitte. And actually, that's 3 years there gave me a backbone to my career, because what it gave was an understanding of how businesses are pulled together. And actually, as a relatively junior person, you get access on a topic to senior management, and you start to see business through their eyes. But importantly, it provided a logic of taking big problems and breaking them down into small ones. And I moved from there into Asda stores. Again, I spent some time traveling, it was opportune, but I went in and I was responsible for publishing their group accounts through a PLC at the time. And I thought that was really interesting. And in terms of learnings as I've had through my career is, you're never too old to learn. And the time I spent in Asda, I moved from being an accountant to a junior buyer, which I loved. The commercial world, understanding customers, understanding the cut and thrust, understanding how different functions work, from marketing to supply, all good careers. And what I found particularly interesting about a company the size of Asda is you could shape your career. And I wasn't a natural accountant. In fact, I'm not very good at it. But from there, I found something that I really enjoyed and really excelled at, which was more the cut and thrust of commerce. And from that, I went into marketing, customer services, and actually over 15 years, I didn't realize at the time, got a very, very good training to business, learning from great leaders and picking up some of their traits. And then as I moved through more into a commercial world, whether it be manufacturing, wholesaling, there's always been a tint of creativity in the jobs that I've liked. There's always been commerce, and there's always been an international aspect. But those formative years is, whilst I didn't appreciate at the time, put me in great stead to, being a CEO, commercial director, but that's been the backbone. And as you learn as you go through your career, the common trust is, or the common link is relationships, and how you build those relationships and how you find sponsorship. So it's been an interesting journey.
Great, thank you very much. Andrew, please.
Yeah, I did history, geography, English at LGS, as it was then. I went to Oxford, read modern history. Again, like many others, not knowing what I wanted to do, and most degrees in the UK don't really set you up for a career path. So I joined Coopers and Lybrand, as was then. Another accountant, or failed accountant in my case. I lasted 1 year, didn't enjoy it, failed my first year exams and left. I then came across this company based in Singapore that was offering long-term management trainee role in Asia in the shipping maritime industry with a British background, and signed up there. And that was literally sort of pack your bags at 23, move to the Far East, and yeah, never looked back. I think the exciting part there was very much a hands-on job. So we were quite a small company at the time. I spent the first 8 weeks jumping on and off ships, doing all the clearance work, going out to the anchorages late at night, seeing how things work, getting very stuck in on the hands-on side of the business, and went from there to then setting up companies in Vietnam, Cambodia, working in some interesting countries like Myanmar, India, and getting involved heavily commercially, but also operationally. I think some learning points there was I started off doing the basics, learning the basics of the trade, spending a lot of time with the junior staff, learning from them, learning the way things worked in the different countries, remembering that I was a visitor in those countries, and behaving accordingly. But yeah, we had a good opportunity to be very hands-on right from the start and get involved in all aspects of the business.
Fantastic. And finally to you, Gary, please.
I studied business studies, history and geography. To be honest, I wasn't really an academic. I was a bit of a late developer, but I was pushed to go into to business, not being a doctor, solicitor, accountant, which a lot of parents want you to be. And to be honest, you can't really script my career in terms of what happened. I followed a marketing interest. I was very fascinated with brands, joined Tesco as graduate trainee. This was after studying management at UMIST, the UMIST, which is now Manchester University. So it's always business. I then did brand management at various companies, but I was fascinated with sport. And in those days, we're talking about the 90s, sport in terms of being commercial was taking off then. It was very much all about on the pitch when I was growing up. But I started to see, especially from the US influence, and started to read books. Like What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School is a famous book, Mark McCormack, IMG, recommend it. And I started to then network and meet sports companies, even in a brand management role. And one day there was an advert that said, interested in football, ? It was 1999. And I thought, that's worth a stamp, I'll apply. And it was my dream job. And I hope everyone, I know other people have said it, if you enjoy what you do, it's not really a job. I mean, I've been very lucky. I've worked for some very high profile people at the EFL, at the Premier League. And I've been to World Cup finals, Rugby World Cup finals, everything. And it's been a mission where effectively I've really had to work hard, not being a great sports person myself. And after about 15, 20 years working for people, effectively selling rights in terms of sponsorship, partnerships. I set up my own company almost 6 years ago, which is The Missing Link. And now I would call myself an introducer, a fixer, an entrepreneur. And I've just really enjoyed and still enjoy being involved with sport and the sports business. And the final thing is, we spoke earlier amongst us, that the sports industry does cover all the disciplines in terms of finance, in terms of law. It's applying those skills into the sport. There's not really the sports lawyers, but there's not sports law. So for people who are have a passion and interest, which is not always important, but for people who sort of see sport as on a Saturday afternoon, it's now a multifaceted industry, especially in terms of tech and what we're going to witness. So I'm very lucky to be doing something I love.
Yeah, brilliant, fantastic. That sounds fascinating. And one of my questions later was actually going to be, does it matter what degree you study? And I think just from that conversation there, the answer is no, not really. You've all got very different journeys and gone into those professions in different ways. So I'll move on from that. I'm going to ask the next question to Mark, and Andy. And this question is, what skills, experience and qualities is your company or sector looking for? So if we could go to Mark R, first of all, please.
Yeah, it's an interesting one to answer for me because, okay, so I've explained how I've got this sort of taken on this entrepreneurial background the last 10 years. Basically, as an entrepreneur, in my case, you have to be across everything. You're doing everything because you're starting with an idea and you've got to build it into something that is of value to somebody else and that other people believe in. So there's a whole range of skills that you need to be able to demonstrate to do that. If you look at the industry that I'm currently working in, which is the semiconductor industry, there's recently been a government inquiry into the semiconductor industry. And the big problem that we're noticing is that the supply chain is quite holy. There's elements of it missing in the UK entirely. So if I'm answering for the semiconductor industry, I think I'd be answering, well, you need manufacturing skills, you need maths and physics skills, but that's not you know, so I did maths and further maths at A level, but that I haven't been, you know, integrating trig functions for my career. That's not what I mean by maths. I mean numeracy. I mean sort of being able to run a P&L, being able to put together an Excel spreadsheet. You know, these are applied mathematical skills that I think you generally need in the workplace today. But then the other thing I was going to say is, actually, somebody mentioned it before, sales, and sales being about relationships. One of the things, I don't know how many people share this view with me on the panel, but one of the things I've noticed is that whatever the organization, the higher up the organization you go, the less technical you become. So let's say you're an accountant for PwC. You're having to do the audits and whatever you do as an accountant at PwC, but the higher up you go, the more you become partner. Howard, maybe you can answer this. The more you have to be a salesperson. It's about relationships. It's about bringing in the contracts and the money for the organization. So, and sales, you talk forever about what sales is and what it means, but to me, it's about relationships. It's about being finding the value that you can add to somebody, being able to communicate that, and building a relationship with somebody so that they essentially trust you and you're able to deliver that value.
Great, thank you. Andy, what about in your sector? What skills or experience do you think are good or being looked for?
Yeah, very much detail requirements. So to understand the mechanisms of the business, what exactly the client is going to require from you. As I say, we're involved in the maritime sector, so 90+% of goods around the world move via sea. Challenges these days include staying on top of, obviously, the carbon neutral position, and shipping has been particularly targeted for that with the dirty fuel that's being burned. But also it's very crucial in delivering the wind farms that we see growing up around the UK and the waters outside as well. I think exactly like Mark was saying, the relationship side of things is very, very important, to build those relationships from the start. And one of the ways you do that is by actually knowing what you're talking about, and hence getting into the detail, and then being able to talk to your customer and ask them, you know, what do they need from you? How do you add value? So that you can build a good business together. And when things do go wrong, as they do, that the relationship is there to keep the business going and to learn from the mistakes and move onwards. Be very adaptable, be very inquisitive, curious, ask questions. Certainly when you get in at a lower level, it's very important to ask. There's no such thing as a daft question, right? Ask the question. The daft thing is not to ask the question. So be curious, be inquisitive, learn. Yeah, those would be my sort of key takeaways.
Thank you. And Mark Young, please, to finish on that question.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I'll sort of, all the businesses I've been in need the same skills and need the same disciplines as well. We talked about before about how relevant is a university degree. The university degree is relevant as a badge of, I guess, ability. And what I'd stress within that is focus on something that you enjoy, because you're probably going to excel at it. Is as you start to go through into the world of careers, is that is the entry gate. From that, it's actually who you are as an individual. And we've touched on this with a number of panelists, is what employers look for is people who can build relationships, work within teams, solve problems, enact change, listen and take a common sense approach. And so there's a maturity that people look for, and that the disciplines are wide. So it could be finance, operations, sales, HR. There's a marketing. There's a breadth of them. And then I thought it was quite interesting the point that Mark made is you will always start as a generalist, because you don't know what you don't know. And as you go through your career, you'll specialize because you'll become good at something that you enjoy. And you know, it feels like a little bit the panelists where we are. We're now generalists again, because you take your experience and you take a broad view of the business. So I touch parts of the business. I have no experience whatsoever, but what you learn through your career is that you've got no way of tackling problems and building relationships and striving with a group of people to achieve something. So firstly, focus on what you enjoy, but then also it's the interaction skills and the people skills that employers really look out for, and that will make a difference from you and the hundreds of other candidates applying for the same job.
Brilliant, thank you. It just seems to me those underlying soft skills cannot be underestimated, can they? This next question is going to be for Howard and Gary, and this question is, how is the world of consulting changing? Howard, could I go to you first on that one, please?
Sure, and I will say, I mean, I echo all the points that the guys have just made in terms of the soft skills, crucially important. Well, the consulting, I mean, it's changed certainly from when I started. You know, the business I'm in was 220 people when I joined, and we're now over 8,000 people. What does that mean today? I think probably two things stand out. One is just the diversity of skills, ideas that form part of what the consultancy profession bring to clients is broader than it's ever been. I mean, we have, which is why I think from a degree perspective, I know people often ask about, you know, what degree should we do to get into consultancy? It doesn't matter whether it's on the art side of the spectrum or the science end of the spectrum. Consultancy today and our business, you know, has massive diversity of skills, from uber creative people doing web design, you know, digital skills, digital strategy, through to, you know, perhaps functional experts like finance and HR, through to, you know, deep technical analytics, data scientists, coding, the whole spectrum. So I think the diversity of consulting is ever growing. I guess the second point I'd probably reference is just the importance of tech fluency. Possibly very different to when we all started our careers, but much more important now. I think people coming into the workplace, regardless of whether you're more on the kind of creative arts end of the spectrum or more analytics, science, technically based, I think that tech fluency is a kind of underlying important trait that people have got to have. You've got to be curious, you've got to embrace it, because it will influence the way you do your job. I'll probably pause there, but those are the two things that probably strike me most.
And Gary, to you, please.
I think in terms of consultancy now, there is so much out there in terms of business, case studies, content. And I think what people are looking for is trying to disseminate all this information that people that come in externally to consult for, whether it's rights owners, whether it's brands, to get under the skin of the business. But I think what I would stress for any young person now, and it's easy for me to say, you've got so much content available on businesses that are any sort of business person, role models, thought leaders. And I think that a great consultant has a diversity of background, but also can see trends and understand macro economics, but also understand the nuances of technology and how things are changing and how it's dynamic. So you really do have to become, to be a leading consultant now, you really do need to embrace you know, everything that's going on, and you have got that opportunity in terms of there's so much out there to absorb.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. So moving on then, I think we can all have a go answering this question. The question is, what did you learn, or what experience at school has been the most useful in your career? Obviously, our students are very much at the beginning of their journey. So if Mark Young, if I come to you first, please, with that question.
Well, I guess what I got from school is, other than friendship and guidance, is in terms of learning, was a curiosity. You know, I wasn't a great student in my formative years, but as I went through to my A-levels, I think the subjects that I chose, I really enjoyed actually, and there was a curiosity that I wanted to explore. So we talked about economics before, and that became my path. So in terms of that, is if you're curious about something, embrace it and challenge it and run with it.
Brilliant, thank you. Can we go to Gary next, please, on that one?
I think I learned a bit of confidence at school by being with people that were effectively more intelligent academic. Maybe I had a self-esteem sort of issue in terms of at the time, but what it really taught me was about friendships and networking. And effectively, if you're not the best and you're not the most sort of, whether that's in sport, in achievement, or drama, or debating and other things, I've been a bit of an underdog. And I think what school really did was give me the confidence where my results got better, and by the end of it, I was ready for university. And I think it was a good preparation. You then go to university, and disrespect to my school, you realise there's people who have been in public schools all their lives and boarding schools, and you think, wow, look at those people. But as you get older, you realise that if you've had a good foundation, and I can honestly say, if I went to another school in Leeds, I possibly would not be where I got to. I think it really gave me a bit more confidence. I was actually proud when I left the school.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think it's a great place to be. I love working here. Andrew, to you, please. Next.
Yeah, I echo a lot of the comments the guys have made already, but I think also the variety of things that are available. So whether you are academically good, whether you're good at sports or drama or music, or in my case, I was actively involved in the Scouts and the Venture Scouts, and that sort of helped me find a bit of niche, build a bit of leadership skills there, get more international travel out of that as well, bit of independence. And the network of friends that were built up there over the years. So I think there are probably 20 plus friends that I'm still in close contact with 30 something years later. And we've scattered all over the world, and many of us have actually come back to Yorkshire over the years, which is a testament to how great a place it is to be. But yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's just the variety that the school offers. You've got a lot of, you can find your niche, doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah, great, thank you. Mark Rushworth, please.
Yeah, 2 points, somewhat sort of echoing the things that have already been said. Intellectual curiosity is something that certainly school gave me. I think you just got to keep learning in life. We're always learning, and the more you learn, the more interesting you can be or will be. So, I mean, give you a small example. One of the things that I found out the other day is that if you go down your local library, you get your library card, you can actually use an app called Libby and get access to all kinds of magazines, including The Economist and whatever you want, you know, business papers from not just the UK, but abroad. That's the other thing. The amount of resource that is available to a linguist studying languages is far above what was available back in 1998 when I was doing my GCSEs. It's incredible what you can, so in terms of resource, it's massive. Of course, you've got to then have the skill set to discern what is good resource and what is bad resource. But that intellectual curiosity is definitely something that school gave me, and is amazing. The other thing is opportunities. And opportunity. So I played rugby, fine, that's a classic. I was absolutely useless at music, right? But this is a little anecdote which just kind of gives you an idea of taking opportunity that's a bit mad, but is kind of interesting. Useless at music. So I decided that I was going to enter the individual music competition, the woodwind section, playing the didgeridoo. And the music teachers at the time, it was Mr. Wheeler, I think it was, and Mr. Dutton, they didn't know what was going on. But they entertained it. They were like, okay, what if he's going to enter the didgeridoo? We're going to actually provide him with some critique. And they did. And I've got this report from then. They took it seriously. And it was fantastic because it just meant it was me putting myself out there, but in a very odd way. And it was accepted by the school. And that sort of access to opportunities, no matter how oddball they might be, just gives you a little bit of added confidence, perhaps, when you sort of come later down the line.
Brilliant. And lastly to you, Howard, please.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not sure I necessarily knew these things at the time, but I think I can look back and realise, I think, what school taught me. Two things as well, I think. Firstly, trajectory. There's no doubt in my mind that you know, I didn't peak at school. You know, I did okay in my GCSEs. I did better at A level. I did better in my degree, and it's kind of, I realised that, you know, life, education, work is a trajectory. You want to be on an upward trajectory, of course, but it's you don't have to win at every stage. You got to keep in the fight and keep plugging away and keep trying different things. So for me, recognition that life is a long trajectory, it's a long road. Explore, innovate. You know, I think that's an important thing that school taught me. Probably the second thing is simply the value of experience, and I probably wish somebody had told me this when I was at school. But you know, entering the professions we're in now, the bar, of course, is high. All the skills, we're all looking, as Mark said, I think, for all the same kinds of skills. I think the more work experience you know, whether it's D&V or through sports or volunteering or entrepreneurial pursuits, you know, the more things you can do that allow you to evidence the qualities that employers want, the better. So I guess perhaps what I didn't know at the time, but wish I'd known, is you know, take every opportunity to get that experience, because it just gives you more opportunity to evidence those skills.
Thank you. Brilliant. Yeah, and again, one of the lovely things about our school is that there's a range of opportunities. I think that's great. I'm conscious of time, so I'm getting some questions in from our audience. So I'll kind of, if we kind of have relatively short answers to these, but I'm going to ask everybody these questions. I think this question here is quite a current theme, I think, really. Do you have a good work-life balance? So if I go around, and Andrew, if I ask you that first, please. A good work-life balance.
I do now. I probably didn't in the early days. It was pretty full on. But that was also part of the exciting part, was, you know, you were immersed in the business side of things. You were learning things. You were meeting new people. Quite a lot of time spent with clients. But yeah, it is a crucial thing that you have to find something outside of work that you enjoy, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Gary.
I definitely do now, being self-employed and being able to do this, manage my own time, but that's taken a while. I think you've got to put your family first. That's one thing. And I've seen lots of people, not me, that have lived to work and now regret it. So I would say I'm one of the lucky ones, where there's plenty of people there who haven't been so lucky in terms of getting it right for work-life balance.
Okay, Howard.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I do now as well. Yeah, I think you have to work hard when you start your career, and and it goes in peaks and troughs. Frankly, I've loved working hard. When I was younger, I lived in New York, in Chicago, in Milan, in Madrid, you know, in Thailand. I've lived in all sorts of places, and I've relished the opportunity to work hard and play hard and travel. Somebody once told me that you should think about 3 bubbles, you know, self, family, and work. And, you know, at different times in your life, those bubbles are different sizes. I think you can start off when you're young without a family. You can have a big work bubble. We're all probably a little bit older, and we've got a different balance now. But yes, in short, I have a good work-life balance, and probably always have had.
Good, thank you. Mark Young.
Stuff happens, and sometimes you've got to roll your sleeves up and get stuck in. And obviously when that goes well, is you get a reward from doing that as well. But if the two are out of balance, somehow that causes problems. So you've got to find the time for your family. And personally, the weekend's my own. When I get home from work, I'll switch my emails off. I go running, and so you find your own way. But yes, I've got a good work-life balance.
Great, thank you. And Mark Rushworth.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So I think it's not a fixed equation. It moves over time as to what the balance between work and life is. I've very much, like Gary was saying before, I've very much prioritized family. So when my 2 children were born, we split the parental leave 6 months, my wife and I. Which had interesting repercussions to my career in terms of acceptance of it from the company I was working for at the time. But then I sort of carved out my own niche in the entrepreneurial world, and now I'm self-employed, and so I work as hard as I need to in order to make the business successful, and also to be able to spend the time with the family.
Okay, great, thank you. And another question that's come in as well. And again, I'll go through this if we can answer this relatively quickly. The question is, do you think you need to be heading into these fields immediately after your degree, or do you think you can start to get into them later in life? Andrew, if we go to you first on that one for a brief answer, please.
No, you don't have to head into them straight after university. I think you're still trying to find your way a little bit. I certainly didn't end up in shipping straight away. I spent best part of 2 years before I ended up in the job that I do now, and I've done it for 26 years and loved it.
Great, thank you. Gary?
I stress that if you're in your 20s, I think you should try and all sorts of work cultures, all sorts of startups, because you're going to be working for a long time. There's no such thing really as a career. We are part of a generation that might be the last generation of spending 20, 30 years with one company. So I would use your 20s, be independent, but to try different things and experiment before you have big responsibilities called family.
Absolutely. Howard, please.
Yeah, slightly different perspective. I mean, I think consultancy, what I do, is a great field to get into early, because it gives you the variety. I do believe absolutely you should try lots of different things before you know what you want to do. And that's why I went into consultancy. It provides that massive variety. I could work in any sector doing any kind of work, and you soon kind of hone in on things you enjoy and get energy from and a community you like. And frankly, I would use that as a way of then, focusing you on where you want to build your career, which could be in retail, it could be in shipping, it could be in a particular discipline. But I think consulting is great as that kind of navigation tool.
Great, thank you. Mark Young, please.
It's not a race. So if you've got a vocation, I don't know, medicine, get stuck in and go for it. If you're unsure, keep broad and find your own place. And naturally, you'll gravitate to where you want to be. But take the pressure off yourself. Lovely,
thank you. Mark Rushworth, lastly, please.
Similarly, I think there's a difference between general skills and specific skills. If you're wanting to go down a specific skill route and you come to that later in life, you have to build up credibility from ground up. If you're selling your transferable skills, then that's less relevant what the career has been. And so, for example, where in management or in consulting, project management, these are all transferable skills. It doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have been in an industry to be able to demonstrate that value you can add to a particular career choice or company.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think that's more or less bringing us to the end of the session. Thank you very much for your participation. I could go on talking about this for ages, actually. It fascinates me as well. So I really hope that our students have got quite a lot out of it. I appreciate that you guys are really busy people, so we really do appreciate you giving up your time and coming to talk to our students today. So thank you very much on behalf of them and on behalf of me, and thank you for a great session. And remember, it's not a race. I will take that with me. So to all of you, thank you very much, and thank you for your participation today and for being willing to give up your time. Thank you very much.